Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome game from the tiebreaks of the round 4 of the FIDE World Cup 2021. It's Magnus Carlsen versus Radosław Wojtaszek, and like I said, the first two classical games ended in a draw, and now they have to go into tiebreak. So whoever wins wins the entire thing and goes into round 5 of the FIDE World Cup. That's already happening, and the first rapid game ended in a draw where Wojtaszek had the white pieces, but now Magnus has the white pieces, and let's see what happens here. And this is basically a very sad story. It features well, a very sad story about a certain piece that wasn't able to get back into the game. Something that often happens, but here it's very nicely illustrated. So without further ado, let's check it out. Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with d4. Sorry about that. We have knight to f6 by Radek, c4, we have e6, knight to c3, and bishop to b4. So the Nimzo-Indian defense is on the board, and e3. e3 and queen to c2 are the two common ways to fight against the Nimzo-Indian. Magnus chooses the e3, also known as the normal line. I think queen to c2 is referred to as the traditional line. I could be wrong, but I think it is. So here we have castles by black, bishop to d3, and now c5, striking in the center. We have knight to e2. a3 is also possible. You could also just challenge the bishop right away. But Magnus chooses knight to e2, adds another defender to the c3 square, which will be of some importance later on. We have d5, grabbing more space in the center. C captures on d5, c captures on d4, e captures on d4, and knight captures on d4. We have castles by Magnus, and now knight to c6. And here Magnus just trades. We have knight captures on d5, and now e captures on d5. Queen captures on d5 is also played here, not as much as e captures on d5 because it's super complicated and it's very easy for black to go wrong. For example, I'll give you just a very nice line in case someone plays this against you. If queen captures on d5, we're just going to challenge the dark square bishop, and once the bishop moves, e7 or d6, we're just going to play knight to c3. Attack the queen here, and now well, it's just easier to play position for white. And also, if black gets greedy and grabs the pawn here, he just loses the game on the spot. Just knight to b5 attacks the queen and the bishop, and once the queen moves, we just eliminate the bishop, and black can never capture back, because if black captures back, bishop captures on h7 check, and we win the queen here. Captures, and queen captures on d6. So, although black can play this, it's a bit easier to play for white. So e captures on d5 is the more preferred line. We have knight to f4, a very nice square for the knight. Also, you could add some pressure to the d5 pawn, for example, and bishop back to d6. And the bishop really has no business being here, and we're going to kick it away with a3, b4 at some point, so you can't really keep an eye on the e1 square. So bishop back to d6, we have bishop to e3, and now comes bishop captures on f4. And this is already a very interesting moment in the game, as Radek decides to give up the bishop pair to activate his queen with tempo. Also, rook to e8. You could go for something like this. You could play knight to b4. Those are all possible moves, but he goes for the forcing bishop captures, and queen to f6. Now, with pressure on the bishop, Magnus moves back the bishop, bishop to e3. Again, you can never capture this. I know you guys already know this, but just in case, I'm going to show it once again. Captures and bishop captures on h7 wins black's queen. So the pawn, although it's not defended twice, it actually is indirectly. So here we have knight to b4, putting pressure on the light square bishop, and the Magnus, of course, very happy to retain his bishop pair, goes bishop back to b1. And next, you're going to kick away the knight, and you're going to bring the bishop back into the game. So here, Radek does what he planned after knight to b4, and that is bishop to f5. He wants to eliminate Carlsen's very strong light square bishop, and you know, he will not have to worry about any weaknesses along this diagonal. So here we have queen to b3, attacking the knight, and Radek trades here. We have bishop captures, rook captures, and now queen to d6, defending the knight here. We have a3, challenging the knight, and now Radek plays knight to a6, which is a very interesting move, because after the knight moves the b7 pawn kind of falls, but not really. And here you can choose knight to a6 or knight to c6. Radek plays knight to a6, although knight to c6 is a bit more precise, because white can never capture the pawn. I mean, you could, but if you capture the pawn, then black has this very, very cool knight captures on d4 move. Sort of a piece sacrifice, but not really, because after bishop captures, rook f to b8 traps the queen. But not really, because, well, white can simply play bishop to e5, attack black's queen, and now black can simply win back the piece, and then white gets the c6 square for his queen. So here, this is pretty much forced, captures on e5, queen to c6, and the game continues. It's a very nice position. You can't go after the pawn because the rook on a8 hangs, and it's a pretty equal position, but you know, probably white is to be preferred. For some reasons, he does have the advantage here, 2 against 1 on the queen side, but black has the central pass pawn, so you know, it all depends whether you prefer to play with the isolated pass pawn or not. Most people do. But okay, after a3, we have knight to a6, and now the idea is the same. You can't really go after the b7 pawn. If you go after it, it's the same idea. Rook f to b8, and now the queen doesn't really have a square, so you have to give up the dark square bishop, and once the queen captures it, now we can capture on a6, and it's pretty much the same thing. Black wins back his pawn, queen captures on d4, and it's the exact same pawn setup with the queens being on different squares. But of course, Magnus does not capture on b7. I mean, why would he? And seeing that the knight is placed a little bit better on c6, and this I didn't say this will be a story, a very sad story, without a reason. So the knight on a6 is basically what starts this story. So here we have rook b to c1. Now Magnus has some ideas of claiming the c file for himself. He would of course very much enjoy doubling up pieces here. Bishop can come maybe to f4 at some point to help out with the control of the c7 square. So queen to d7. Now the queen guards the b7 pawn, and the bishop to f4 now. Grabbing more control of the c7 square, but the black will not have any of this. He just counters white's rooks with rook a to c8. We have queen to g3, now with triple control of the c7 square, but also black does not have a dark square bishop, so you might have some problems if, for example, bishop to h6 appears on the board. So here we have f6, and it's a really ugly position for black because this knight can never enter the game. Look at the pawns here, covering. This is covered 3 times, so you can't really do anything here. And even if you try to play something like knight b8 to bring it back with knight to c6, we're just gonna capture here once, and after captures, we're just gonna pick up the piece. So simple as that. So instead, after queen to g3, we have f6 by black. Now the queen covers g7, so no bishop to h6 action is possible. But now Magnus says, okay, there's a weakness. Let's create more weaknesses. So he plays h4, h5, h6. Of course, is the idea. We have rook captures on c1, rook captures, and rook to c8. Radek wants to eliminate all of the pieces of the board. I haven't mentioned this, but the robot clearly states it's a rapid game, as the 2 previous games have been classical time format. So here Magnus captures on c8, queen captures, and now the beautiful b4. It's often that in games when someone plays b4, you know, something beautiful happens, but here it's no different. The knight has no way of entering the game. All of these squares are taken by the pawns, and these squares by the bishop and by the queen. So the knight on a6 is a very, very sad knight, and how will Radek ever activate it? So here we have b5, and Magnus just continues with his plan. We have h6, h5, preparing h6, we have queen to d7, and now queen to f3. Again, saying, okay, now you can maybe activate your knight, but then I'm just going to capture and eliminate the d5 pawn, and then I have a passed d pawn. So you can't really activate the knight regardless of what you do. We have h6 by black, not allowing h6 by white, and now comes queen to c3. So again, keeping an eye on the c7 square, not allowing black to activate the knight. We have queen to f5, now saying, okay, now I'm gonna capture the bishop, so you have to do something about that. And Magnus just plays g3. Not a problem, you don't have to worry about queen to b1 check, it's really nothing, we're just gonna play king to g2. So here, queen back to d7, Radek forced to wait and see what Magnus will do, and now queen to c2, with some ideas of maybe queen g6, bishop captures on h6, and so on. So here, king to f8, avoiding such ideas, and now comes queen to h7. So again, what do you play here? Well, here there's really no way for black to make any progress, and there's still no way to activate the knight. There is one move, and that is of course knight to c7, and this is what Radek played. But this is exactly what Magnus was waiting for, as there is no way to there's no way to activate the knight, but activating the knight is the only way. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the only, well, pretty much winning move for white that, you know, wins the game while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on realizing that the queen on d7 is undefended. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's of course the bishop captures on h6. And now with this pawn eliminated, it's only a matter of time. This bishop will move back, the pawn will go to h6, and black's entire defenses will be ruined. So, oh, and of course, if you capture, you lose the queen. That goes without saying. So after bishop captures on h6, we have queen to g4. Now, maybe you will be able to capture the bishop, even though the knight is now hanging, so it's not really a problem. But just bishop back to e3. Everything is defended here. The queen now guards this pawn, and h6 is coming. So here, knight to e6. Radek had to give up this one pawn to activate his knight, but now queen to h8 with check. h6 was also a possibility right away. King to f7, and now queen to c8. Magnus, instead of pushing this pawn, just decides to leave it there, and he says, okay, now I'm going to give check, start eliminating this pawn, play a4, create a pass pawn here. Pretty much straightforward. With queen to e4, and now comes queen to d7 check. This is unstoppable. King to g8, and the queen captures on a7. We have knight to g5. Black completely disregarded capturing on h5, and he says, all right, now I'm going to try to pose some problems here for the white king. That's my only option. But of course, the bishop captures on g5. Magnus is more than happy to go into this endgame. We have queen to e1 check, king to g2, and now queen to e4 check. King to h2, and now f captures on g5. But now the b5 pawn is also lost. Queen to b8 check, the b5 pawn is gone. King to f7, now comes queen to c7 check. Magnus first decides to give a few more checks before capturing this pawn, and maybe he's not going to capture it at all, because here we have king to f6, now queen to d6, we have king to f7, and now Magnus shows why he is so strong in the endgame, because, well, who wouldn't grab this pawn and have two connected pass pawns on the queen side? Everyone would grab this pawn. There's no not grabbing this pawn. But Magnus shows how simple chess really is. He just plays queen to g6 check. He gives up one of his pawns just to trade queens, and he knows that this king and pawn endgame is winning. That's how you know, chess is a fun game. So here, queen captures on g6, only move. We have h captures on g6, king captures, and now g4. And this is such a strong move, not allowing black any squares here. But the thing that you have to realize before trading queens is that black covers all of these squares. So you have no way of entering the position with your king. But Magnus knows that this is not a problem, because at some point he will have f4, and also he has the very strong a4. So basically, the simplest idea is we're gonna march our king over to the queen side, play a4, create a pass pawn here, and then leave the black king, you know, struggling with the defense of the well, our pass pawn, and then we're just going to use our king to pick up all of the other pawns. To give you a really quick example, the game continued king f6, king to g3, king to e6, and now Magnus played king to f3. And it was in this position on move 48 that Radosław Wojtaszek resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So that's all it takes to, you know, be a great chess player. Even though Magnus could, you know, grab that b pawn and play a queen's endgame, being up 2 pawns, he decided to go into a king and pawn endgame, being up only 1 pawn, because he knows his endgames and he knows that this is completely winning. So here Radek resigned. To give you a quick tour, let's say king d6, we're just gonna march our king all the way to the queen side, king e3, king to c6, doesn't matter what black plays, our plan is exactly the same. King d6, king c3, king c6, we're going to play king to b3, and now after black plays whatever, we're going to play a4. So now, if black doesn't capture, we create a pass pawn here, and there's not all that much you can do. Or, you know, we can just play a5, create a pass pawn, shift our king over here, then play f4, and then we're definitely breaking through. So here, game might continue. B captures on a4. We're gonna play king captures, king a6, and now b5 check. King b6. We're gonna grab the opposition, and now black can either lose the opposition or try and waste the move. But we can also waste the move. We're gonna play f3, king b7, now king c5, and that's it. We just start grabbing all of these pawns, and then of course it's completely winning. So Radek knows this, and after king to f3, he resigned the game, and it's Magnus who goes into round 5 of the FIDE World Cup, and we'll see what happens next. I think he faces, I don't want to lie to you, so I'm gonna check. I'm pretty sure who he's facing, but let me just check real quickly. There we go. Yeah, he faces Andrei Esipenko, so it's going to be a really awesome match, I have no doubt, and we're going to check it out what happens. So 30 players, 32 players are no more, now there are 16, and we'll see who will emerge victorious in the FIDE World Cup 2021. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Really a nice one, and really, a sad story of the knight stuck on a6. And there was never really a reason for the knight to come to a6. He could have just played knight to c6, and all the same tactics apply. White can never capture on b7, and the knight would just be much better placed, and would have a better game. But here, knight to a6 was played, and as of this moment, Magnus, planned his entire game against the knight weirdly placed on a6, and that was all it took to take down Radek, who confronted Magnus very nicely in the classical time section, but in the rapids it simply wasn't enough, and this knight on a6 was the last straw. So once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Steven Binder, Amit Gopal Hatimare, Jan de Reuter, happy birthday Grenki, and Miha Kennedy for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE World Cup, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.